ACOTA is an acronym for Africa Contingency Operations Training and Assistance. The Africa Contingency Operations Training and Assistance, ACOTA program, is a U.S. State Department initiative designed to enhance the capacities and capabilities of its African partner countries, regional institutions, and the continent's peacekeeping resources as a whole, so that they can plan for, train, deploy, and sustain sufficient quantities of professionally competent peacekeepers to meet conflict transformation requirements with minimal non-African assistance. ACOTA is a part of this U.S. State Department's Global Peace Operations Initiative. The U.S. Institute of Peace has been partnering with ACOTA since 2008. We deliver 5-day pre-deployment trainings to African peacekeepers who are deploying to African Union and United Nations peacekeeping missions throughout Africa and the Middle East, including Mali, or MINUSMA, Central African Republic, or MINUSCA, Darfur, UNAMID, Lebanon, UNIFIL, South Sudan, UNAMIS, Democratic Republic of Congo, MONUSCO, Cote d'Ivoire, UNOCI, and Somalia, AMISOM. As of December 2015, the Academy has trained over 3,700 peacekeepers, and we have conducted 114 trainings in 16 countries, including Benin, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cameroon, Djibouti, Ghana, Malawi, Mauritania, Nigeria, Republic of the Congo, Rwanda, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Togo, and Uganda. The goal of our training is to strengthen peacekeepers' capacity to protect civilians through the nonviolent resolution of conflicts. Our 5-day training is meant to develop non-military skills to complement the military skill peacekeepers are strengthening in the pre-deployment training. In our training, peacekeepers develop the skills of conflict analysis, communication, negotiation, and mediation in support of protecting civilians. Our training is practical and applied. We equip peacekeepers with new skills to enable them to respond more effectively through nonviolent means in complex environments that require engagement with host governments, armed groups, local leaders, refugees, internally displaced persons, and others. Active listening is one of the foundational building blocks of the training. We introduce peacekeepers to active listening after we introduce them to 2 contrasting approaches to communication during conflict, dialogue, and debate. We remind peacekeepers that active listening is important in managing conflicts. We set up the session with a role play in which my co-trainer and I will act out a scenario where poor listening is at work. The scene opens with an employee going to her supervisor's office, that's usually me, to express an issue she is having. I like to play the supervisor, and the employee is working on a project with a colleague who is not contributing to the project's development. The deadline is just in a few days, and the employee is frustrated and worried that her colleague's lack of performance will negatively impact her. She goes to her boss for assistance, but her boss has no interest in hearing her direct report's concerns. She demonstrates poor listening. After 3 minutes of acting out poor listening skills, we ask our training participants if what they just witnessed was an example of bad communication. We then elicit what they heard and observed. We chart responses, and then we role play again, but this time the supervisor is a much better listener. When the role play ends, we elicit what they heard and observed and chart out what active listening looks like. We then introduce participants to the 6 active listening skills. Once that is completed, we ask them to practice active listening. They work in triads, or groups of 3, and take on different roles: speaker, listener, and observer. The speaker has to recount a recent conflict they have experienced, personal or professional, while the second group member practices using the 6 active listening techniques. We remind the listener that his or her job is not to resolve the conflict that the speaker is relating, but rather simply to listen actively. The third person in the group is the observer. The observer's attention is on the listener, and the observer is making sure that the listener is using all 6 techniques. They take turns through 3 rounds, and we come back together and debrief. we talk about which active listening skills are the most difficult. Peacekeepers seem to have a good time with the exercise and comment on how active listening is far more challenging than they initially imagined. We end the session asking participants to practice active listening whenever they can. It will not only make them better peacekeepers, but also better spouses, parents, friends, colleagues, etc. I have spoken with many peacekeepers who come back from mission. They talk about how instrumental active listening skills are to mission success. They find that they are required to use active listening skills with government forces and rebel groups to pass roadblocks to successfully conduct patrols. So you can see from this example that active listening is critical to the success of peacekeeping missions.